Welcome to High School Football Report, sponsored by Showcase Sports. I'm Dan Russman. On the phone with me is my co-host Dave Birnbaum. Dave, how are you?
How are you, Dan? Another week in this craziness.
I know, and I'm pretty excited because I'll tell you what, man, I got to do some high school football last week, which was a lot of fun. I mean, I think you watched some of the games on the live streams, which is nice for the fans that can't get to these games.
Can I just say something about the live stream? I think Hammonton needs to work on that a little bit because there is no volume.
Okay.
So we got to talk to someone, Dan.
Hey, we'll see. I'll see Coach Parks this week over at Hammonton, the athletic director, Maureen Parks. I'll talk to her, and if I see Coach Razzo during the week, I probably will. I'll let him know. I'll say, hey, you got to get that feed fixed up. People are itching to get some audio, man. You got to hear what's going on. You got to hear the crowd. I mean, they had a pretty good crowd over there. I mean, obviously with the rules now, with the distancing and that kind of stuff, you can only let the parents and folks in. But a pretty good crowd over at Hampton. I thought they had a little bit bigger crowd down in Buena for St. Joe's game. I'm not really sure how they went about distributing passes to that game, who got in and who didn't. But two good crowds, good atmosphere too. I mean, I was at the Hammonton game for. We'll start with talking about them. They won their game 27-22. I was there for the first quarter, and kind of an ugly start for Hammonton. I mean, Millville went down the field, scored on their first two possessions. They're up 14-0, and I pull in the parking lot at Buena and I check the score, and Hammonton's down 14-0. I'm saying to myself, man, what's going on?
Well, you know how Hammonton likes to play. They like to go down early and then they come back. They gather and then they start pouncing in the second and third quarter. I think they were getting their little shakes out in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it was a little different. I mean, Coach Razzo said that he kind of felt like they came out sluggish because and coaches like routines, football players like routine, and with all the new things going on and new protocols and how you're supposed to do things. Their whole pregame got really disrupted. The fact that normally they get together on a Friday, they have a pregame meal. They had to do that outside in tents, and they had half the kids in one tent, half the kids in another tent. And then like Coach Razzo said to me, he goes, then I go in the locker room to do the pregame, and there's like 11 kids in there. He goes, because we could only get so many in the locker room. He goes, so I'm trying to get the pregame talk, get them all pumped up, and half of them are outside, half of them are standing in the next room. He said, so it was really kind of just a weird situation. And they came out flat, but they did put some points on the board right before the half. Kyle Vanderveer hits Santino Rayo, 29-yard touchdown pass, kind of like what they used to do with the Hawks down at the lake back in the old days when they were playing for the Hammonton Hawks. Those two used to hook up a lot, and they did in this one. They cut that lead to 14-7, and then the second half turned into Jaden Abrams' show. I mean, he ran for I think he had 120 of his 189 yards in the game in the second half. Scored 3 touchdowns, one on I think a 26-yard run, a couple of short runs at the goal line. Coach told me, they leaned on Jaden. They felt like they could wear Millville down, and they were able to do that. And a great game for Jaden Abrams.
Yeah, I mean, he played. He had an incredible game. I mean, it was something special watching him on the stream with no sound. But he definitely played really well. And he's going to have one heck of a season.
I think he is too. I mean, he got a little nicked up in his game, but Coach said over the weekend he was feeling 100%, ready to go. You got to like the offensive line, the work they did. Brock Beebe, Michael D'Agostino, Johnny Shabilia, Luis Rodriguez, Joe McIntosh. Those 5 guys up top, in front. They did a great job. The defense settled in, made some plays in the second half, had a couple of big stops, and for Hammonton, a nice win to start their season. And sets them up for a game this week against Violent, we'll talk about in a couple of minutes.
Absolutely.
And you go across town over to St. Joe, not the greatest weekend for the Wildcats. I mean, they opened their season down at Buena. They play Holy Spirit, rematch at the state championship, the Holy War, all the different angles that you get in that game. Emotional game. I mean, both sides were very fired up. There was a lot of chippiness out there on the field, a lot of pushing and shoving. You get the feeling that these two teams don't really like each other. But for St. Joe, I just thought, being at that game, too many mistakes, too many different breakdowns, especially in the secondary, and it hurt them. I mean, they drove. They had a nice opening drive after they got a Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit had a nice try to start the game, fumble. St. Joe got it, drove down inside the 20, couldn't convert. Holy Spirit gets the ball back, and they march right down the field. They score on a little post pattern inside, down close. They take a 6-0 lead. St. Joe gets the ball back again. They had a nice little drive together. Eventually had a punt. They pinned the Holy Spirit back, and Spirit, breaks a 91-yard touchdown pass on a little screen out in the flat. Kid cut the pass, went untouched down the end zone, breakdown in coverage. Now it's 12-0. Third quarter, St. Joe kind of went out of their offense. They started the offense in the shotgun. Jaden Chattel didn't really have the greatest night the other night. I think he was 9 of 25. Looked a little bit, uncomfortable back there. Was getting chased around a lot by Holy Spirit. They went to the run in the second half with Ahmad Ross. He had 117 yards in this game. Scored the only touchdown for the Wildcats early in the fourth quarter. They cut that lead to 12-6. They get a big defensive stop, have an opportunity to go down and score again. I think they had a third, and I want to say it was about a 3rd and 6. Deep in Holy Spirit territory. Got a false start that pushed them back, and they threw 2 incompletions. Drive kind of stalled. Spirit got the ball back, and they hit a 65-yard touchdown pass that really ices the game at that point.
Those 2 big plays, that was the icing on the cake, and St. Joe just couldn't come back from that. Overall, I think the kids just weren't ready to play. Mm-hmm. I think you said it earlier, too. With everything that's different, it's just a different vibe right now. Absolutely. And I just don't think they were ready to play on Friday night.
Yeah, it was the atmosphere was there. It had that kind of playoff type of atmosphere. Good crowd, people fired up, yelling and screaming on both sides. The players looked pretty intense, pretty into it. But for St. Joe, just a flat kind of performance. I think part of it was them being a little flat, and part of it is the fact that Holy Spirit's a very good team. At some point, you got to tip your hat to them, and you got to say, hey, you know what? Maybe they're a better team than we are right now. At this point, a lot of veterans on that Holy Spirit team. Patrick Smith ran the ball real well for them. Trevor Cohen, the quarterback, was very efficient. I think he was 9 of 12 in the game. They picked their spots to throw the ball. Head coach A.J. Russo and his staff did an outstanding job because their defense kind of bent but never really broke. They did give up the 1 touchdown drive, but for St. Joe, maybe they need to re-examine their offensive philosophy a little bit. I know they tried to change things up this year, try to go with more of a passing attack. Didn't really work out for them. Part of that could have been because of the defense they were playing against with Holy Spirit, but we'll see what they do this week when they go to Pleasantville.
Yes, absolutely, and that one's going to be a true test to see how the team truly plays, if they're going to be a good team or not this season.
Absolutely. Not an easy schedule. Pleasantville, and we'll talk about it in the next segment, coming off a 21-19 win against a good Cedar Creek team. So, for St. Joe, a lot of athletes on the field next week. We'll see what they can do. But that pretty much gives us a look at what happened last week. When we come back on High School Football Report, we'll talk about the games that are coming up this week, and that'll be up right after this.
Well, my friends, when it comes to real estate, buy with Byrne, sell with Byrne. Whatever you want to do with real estate, do it with Dave Birnbaum of RE/MAX Community, and you'll be buying or selling before you know it. So buy with Byrne or sell with Byrne. Just make sure to see Dave Birnbaum at RE/MAX Community.
Maplewood is known for their homemade spaghetti. Their comfortable atmosphere and seating with complimentary bread and salad, along with great service to make it feel like home. At Maplewood, you are sure to get that Italian family love.
With more than 25 years' experience, he knows what you need to feel like yourself again.
Welcome back to High School Football Report, sponsored by Showcase Sports. Now we're going to talk about the games coming up this week. We'll start with Friday night. Well, both games are Friday night, but we'll start with Hammonton. They're going to host Vineland on Friday, 6 o'clock over at Captain Ferry Field. This is a Vineland team that hasn't played yet. They had their first game.
Isn't Vineland your team? I heard it's your team.
Not my team. That's where I live, but they're not my team. I'm an old Bluefield boy, man. My alma mater, we got hammered by our rival Montclair over the weekend, lost by 3 touchdowns. So it was not a good week for me and the boys that I used to play for. But Vineland didn't play last week. They had their game with the Prep canceled because St. Augustine had some issues with the COVID, and they wound up getting back, but not in time to play the game. So the Prep added Lenape later on in the season. Vineland now 2 weeks to prepare for this game. I think Coach Russo down there, I think he kind of shifted the focus as soon as that prep game got canceled. Started working on getting ready for Hammonton. I know I know some of the members of the Vineland staff, and they were talking to me during the week, trying to kind of get my read on what I think of Hammonton. I don't usually share too much information. I try to keep it to myself, but good team with Vineland. 18 seniors. They got a pretty solid quarterback, Caleb Gandy, can throw the ball around. Coach Russo is going to want to mix it up a little bit. I like one of their linebackers. I think Lathan Kent's the kid's name. He's very, very good. They got a nice left tackle who can do some things. I mean, this is a dangerous team.
I think with what you're saying, if they're a dangerous team, I believe that. But with them not playing last week, I think that's really going to affect them going in up against Hammonton this week.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about it in the last segment about routine. And, Hammonton now has a game under their belt. They're not going to be, I think, as thrown off by the fact that, things are a little bit different this year. That's going to be the case for Vineland. Vineland's going to have to get on a bus, come up Route 54, get off the bus, probably have to be already dressed and ready to go when they get off, not going to have a locker room to go to. They're going to come on the field, do their pregame. You're not going to have a big crowd because, only the parents are going to be in the stadium. So a team like Vineland, who tends to be very emotional, very, they feed off of that atmosphere. You're not going to have that this week because, just by the simple fact that the numbers aren't going to be there to kind of get a big, rowdy kind of crowd going. But they can do some things. They have some good wide receivers. Levi Manson, big kid, can run real quick. DeMarcus Rivers, a 300-pound lineman, who's very good in the middle. Hammonton's going to deal with him because, I think Vineland probably is bigger up front. So for them to be able to get Abrams going, which is what they're going to want to do, they're going to need to move some big guys out of the way.
I think they'll be able to do it. You know how Hamden plays scrappy football sometimes. Oh, yeah. And they are smaller, but they're strong. They're strong up front.
Absolutely. And Jaden has the speed to get outside. People look at him, he's a big kid, 6 foot, he's probably about 200 pounds. And people think, oh, you're just a big bruiser kind of running back, because he has that kind of style. He runs a little high. I think he looks for contact when he runs. He's running guys over. I've seen plays where you think, where most backs would maybe make a little bit of a cut to try and avoid a defender. He cuts back into him and just tries to plow through. He enjoys that. I think he feeds off of that. I think that's why he gets stronger as the game goes on. But you might see Hammonton use some of the other guys, like Dominic Lasassa, A.J. Riker's probably going to get some carries this week. So you're going to see them. I think you see some options with Kyle Vanderveer, who's a very good runner, very underrated running quarterback. I think Kyle is.
I can't wait to see them play this week. I think you're nailing it. You have everything ready to go. We don't fully know how Vineland's going to play because they sat. So, it's going to be interesting to see them come out, though.
Absolutely. You're also talking about a turf team. Vineland plays their home games on turf. You get them on grass. Maybe it slows them down a little bit. I don't think the weather's probably going to be kind of similar to last week. I think it's going to be a nice, crisp kind of fall night. So I don't think the weather's going to be a factor in this one. But I'm looking for some good things out of Hammonton this week.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear your prediction on this one.
Well, we'll get that in a couple of minutes, but we'll talk about St. Joe now. St. Joe, they're going to look to bounce back. They go down to Pleasantville. Pleasantville team that had a 21-0 lead on Cedar Creek last week, held on for a 21-19 win. A lot of changes at Pleasantville. I think Javier Garcia takes over as head coach for Chris Sacco, who went to Absegami. There's still some members of the staff left over there at Peeville. The Greyhounds have a lot of guys back from last year from a team that was a semifinalist. I think it was Central Jersey Group 2 playoffs. Where they lost to Woodrow Wilson, who one of the better teams in the state. But for Pleasantville, their quarterback, a sophomore, Marlon Leslie, played last year as a freshman. He's got a real good arm. They run a spread offense. They're going to line up 5 wideouts. They're going to put a lot of pressure on a St. Joe secondary that Holy Spirit picked them apart a little bit last week. So I think if you're Kawan Lewis coaching the defense over at St. Joe, you got to be a little bit concerned about the fact that Pleasantville has some weapons that can maybe exploit some weaknesses in the back.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think St. Joe is really going to focus on their defense this week because I think that's what they need to work on. It's definitely their cornerbacks and their safeties. They just need to know how to cover the pass a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think offensively, I mean, I'm curious to see what St. Joe does in this. Like I said, first half last week, they kind of started out with the stuff that they want to do, that they talked about doing this year with some of the shotgun packages and a little more wide open type of offense. But then second half, Coach Sacco kind of went back to his bread and butter, the run game with Ahmad Ross. So I'm curious to see how St. Joe approaches this week. When I asked Coach about the offense after the game, he no commented me, which is really kind of unusual for him. I mean, he and I usually when I ask some tough questions, he usually has answers, and he'll give me some thoughts and stuff. And he had nothing. He looked me in the eye and he said, I'm not going to talk about our offense. And so that's something that you could tell is on his mind. You could tell he was not pleased with the performance of the offense last week. Really, with the performance overall. I mean, I think the coaching staff at St. Joe really felt like they were going to win that game last week. I think they were disappointed. And Coach did hint that he said to me, we're going to make some changes. We're going to fix things up this week. So I would look for a different kind of look at St. Joe this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be. This is, and I said it earlier too. This is a true test to see what type of St. Joe Academy they truly are, because if they end up slacking on Pleasantville here, they may not be the same St. Joe team that we're used to.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think, and you're looking at, I mean, even though it's a 6-game schedule this year, there's really no layups on the schedule. I mean, when they come back from Pleasantville, they have a three week in a row on the road. They're going to go down to Millville, a team that we saw last week gave Hammonton all it could handle. A Hammonton team that right now I think is a little bit better than St. Joe. So I mean, Millville's going to be a test when they go down there. Then they go to Vineland, who again we're going to see this week, a Vineland team with some skill. And then they close the year with Cedar Creek and Timber Creek, two of the better teams in South Jersey. So for St. Joe, I mean, you don't want to get an 0-2 start, because it's really going to put you in a bad spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, that would really be very heart-crushing.
I think it would. So, like I said, I mean, looking for St. Joe to bounce back. I mean, I think they will. Coach Sacco traditionally, St. Joe usually comes back from losses very well. They focus. They get themselves back on the right page, and they know what they want to do. I think you're going to see a very kind of psyched up, ready to go St. Joe team this week.
Yeah, can't wait to see how they play. And we got 2 big games this week.
Absolutely. Well, they're all big this year because they're only playing a few. So, but that gives you a look at this week's games. When we come back on High School Football Report, Dave and I are going to give our predictions on these games, and that's coming up right after this.
Gazette Print Shop is here for you or your business. Whether you need a logo, posters, mugs, stationery, t-shirts, and much more, they can design it and make it a reality. Gazette Print Shop will help you promote your business and spread your message. Give your marketing a new direction with GPS. Gazette Print Shop. Go to Showcase Sports when you're looking for high school sports equipment and apparel, featuring gear with the logos of the Hammonton Blue Devils, St. Joseph Wildcats, and other high school teams.
Welcome back to High School Football Report, sponsored by Showcase Sports, and now we're going to wrap up our show with the predictions. We'll start off with Hammonton. They get Vineland at home this week. I think a Vineland team is going to come in pretty exciting. They haven't played yet this year. They're going to be fired up. But I think Hammonton's going to be able to establish the run. I think they're going to use Jaden Abrams. I think he's going to get his yards. He's going to get his touchdowns. I think they may maybe hit a pass or two deep down the field against Vineland. I think Hammonton wins this one pretty comfortably. I have them winning at 28-13. What do you have, Dave?
I like that, Dan. I like that a lot. I actually think this week Abrams is going to have a blowout game. That's what I'm expecting from. And I have Hammonton winning 34-12.
Okay. Then we'll go to St. Joe. St. Joe goes down to Pleasantville. This is a Pleasantville team that I think a lot of people kind of thought would take a big step back this year. I think they're going to take a little step back. I don't think it's going to be that huge. I think they got some talent. They're very confident. A lot of kids back from the last couple of years when Chris Sacco was coaching there. St. Joe, I think the biggest thing they're going to have to do this week is really avoid the mistakes. I think the biggest difference last week in Holy Spirit, I thought the teams were pretty equal on the field. Just that Spirit kind of didn't make many mistakes. St. Joe made a lot. And at the end of the day, that turned out to be a 12-point difference. I think if St. Joe is focused, I think if they play a clean game, no turnovers, no stupid penalties, are able to kind of move the ball either through the air or running it a little bit. I think they're going to see a mix this week. I think they win this game pretty easy. I have St. Joe winning 32-20.
Wow, so that's a big, high-scoring game. Not much confidence in the defense, Dan.
Well, I mean, I think St. Joe's going to want to make a point. I think people are kind of down on them. I think they want to show everybody that, hey, you know what? Don't sleep on the Wildcats.
It's a good point. I'm going a little bit opposite from you. I think it's going to be, again, I don't have much faith in the offense yet. I do think St. Joe's going to win, but I'm going with 14-10. St. Joe. I think it's going to be, again, more defensive, low scoring, until I start seeing otherwise of them getting into a rhythm.
Okay. Well, that gives you what we think. Again, we're both picking wins this week again for the second week in a row, so we'll see if we can improve our records a little bit. We're both sitting at 1-1 right now and picking these games. But when we come back next week on High School Football Report, we'll recap the games and we'll preview the following week when Hammonton goes on the road for the first time. They'll go down to Atlantic City. St. Joe stays on the road. They go down to Millville. Oh, no, Hammonton goes to St. Augustine Prep. I'm sorry. I'm thinking 2 weeks ahead. Yeah, big showdown on the 17th or the 16th.
Yeah.
When Hammonton's going to face their old coach, Pete Lancetta, down at the Prep. Unfortunately, not going to be a big crowd down there, but I think it's going to be a great game. And then St. Joe will go to Millville. So we'll see how that works out. And again, so looking like 2 road games next week. But again, all the games are being live streamed this year, so you can check that out. I know Hammonton, if you go to the district website, you can get the link. St. Joe, I forget, it's a YouTube thing. So I think if you run a search for YouTube for St. Joseph High School, St. Joseph Academy football, you'll probably find that there. Mr. Hollingsworth is doing the game. So, but yeah, that wraps up our show this week, and be sure to check it out next week. And I'm Dan Russman,
and I'm Dave Birnbaum. Stay classy, South Jersey.
And we'll see you next week. Take care.